At this portion in this tape, I would like to point out what I believe to be a fundamental truth in respect to the credibility of top-level strongmen, past and present. It may shock the viewer to hear that I have been informed by numerous world-recognized authorities that in most instances, record competitive strength lifts performed in our present day have been increased by at least 30% due to the use of drugs and body support gear. What may shock the viewer even more is that when we subtract 30% from present-day lifts, they are reduced to a level 40 years ago established by drug-free lifters. It seems that the general public have been kept in the dark by the news media in many aspects of modern sport, especially so when comparing the new to the old. Where then are or is the naturally strongest man or men in modern history? It goes without saying that all those who have utilized drugs to elevate their strength level have eliminated themselves from the title strongest man. It follows then that a criteria must be established to arrive at the discovery of just who is or was the naturally strongest all-round lifter in modern history. There are a limited number of strongmen, past and present, although very few who possess the credentials to serve as the pre-mentioned criteria. There are a limited number of strongmen, past and present, although very few who possess the credentials to serve as the pre-mentioned criteria. According to the publicized statements of world-renowned experts, I stand alone as the strongest for the following reasons. In order to reestablish a comparison of true strength among our present-day strongmen worldwide, we of necessity must have a genuine drug-free, that is lifetime drug-free, elite strength athlete to serve or act as the source of comparison. Such a person must have the greatest overall credibility among those very few lifters, past and present. It seems, according to the opinion of international authorities, because of the fact that I alone set a standard of overall strength in the basic recognized competitive pure strength lifts, the lifts that have been performed daily in gyms, homes, etc., worldwide in our modern times by millions of people, thus establishing the only criteria to measure an overall standard of physical strength for comparative evaluation. Odd lifts done with chains, harness, barrels, rocks, platforms, etc., are not suitable for overall evaluation as they are performed by specialists which represent possibly a fraction of 1% of the general population. The basic lifts I refer to for proper evaluation are the following: overhead press, deadlift, bench press, squat, curl, and one-arm dumbbell pressing. From these lifts and these lifts alone, we can arrive at just who are the naturally strongest men and men in history. As I said, it seems that according to the opinion of international authorities, due to the fact that I alone set a standard of overall strength considerably above that of all other elite in the basic lifts worldwide in the early 1940s, the period in which steroids and other modes of drug usage were non-existent. A level of strength, incidentally, that is comparable to elite lifters of today. This standard then must represent the bottom line, as it were, from which all the potential challengers would undergo an extensive comparative analysis in order to ascertain just who is the strongest natural man in modern history. At this point in time, I have issued a personal challenge to all world strength athletes to duplicate the lifts that I performed in my prime prior to the steroid and drug era, drug-free. I have also extended this challenge to all world athletes over the age of 70 years. To date, both worldwide challenges have appeared in 65 countries. To date, both challenges issued to the world's best young and old strength athletes stands unanswered. This challenge has been further extended to any or all representatives of those elite strongmen no longer living on the basis of documented evidence presented for examination. The pre-mentioned representatives may undergo further questioning to establish final validation. This challenge I have issued is not, I say again, is not for the purpose of self-aggrandizement, but rather to reestablish the sanctity and credibility within our modern world of heavy athletics. All would-be contestants are requested to comply to the following terms: no belt or wraps, loose-fitting sweatsuit only to be worn, must be lifetime drug-free, polygraph and drug test as required by the WEWA upon acceptance of entry form, undisputed birth certificate required, plus VHS video documentation of qualifying lifts endorsed by 3 qualified witnesses presented with the entry form. All qualifying lifts to be performed with internationally accepted calibrated bars and plates. I wish to say here that it seems after numerous attempts to have this information published, I am forced to do this myself so that my story will reach you, one of many representatives of dedicated athletes in our modern world of strength. An international television promotion based in Hollywood, USA, is presently being arranged to ascertain the strongest group of natural men in modern history and which man within this group reigns supreme. This promotion will show throughout USA, Canada, and Europe under the title Search for the World's Strongest Man. Invitational challenges have been issued to top caliber athletes in the USSR and 65 countries, and to young and senior category divisions by the World Elite Weightlifting Association. 5 qualifying basic lifts have been chosen by the WEWA. They are, number 1, standing press off rack, 450 pounds. 2-hand strict curl, 260 pounds. 1-arm dumbbell press in strict style, 200 pounds. 4, squat, 800 pounds. And the last one, number 5, dumbbell hold out at the side, 110 pounds. Contestants who qualify are eligible to the following benefits. Qualifying lifts for seniors over 70 years. Standing press off rack, 210 pounds. Strict 2-hands curl, 160 pounds. 1-arm dumbbell press, 110 pounds. Squat, 400 pounds. 5, number 5, lift close grip bench press, 225 pounds. Benefits for those who qualify. Proposed cash award. Potential movie involvement. VCR tape promo sales. Endorsements. Celebrity status. Tours. Worldwide publicity. Expenses, etc., etc. Perhaps the viewer, as well as myself, will find it hard to believe that nobody has come forward to take advantage of such an opportunity. As to the reason why, I will leave it to the viewer's imagination. In order to ascertain the claim to the strongest natural man in modern history, I am compelled to present a comparative analysis involving those outstanding lifters of the past. Unfortunately, there is no method available to document the fact of being lifetime drug-free in respect to those elite strongmen active in the late 1940s and early 1950s who are deceased. However, in respect to those great lifters, they must be accepted as possible candidates for the ultimate title in the world of strength. However, there is a gray side to this situation, as the possibility of drug usage exists, which would nullify comparative evaluation and conclusion. There is the possibility, however, that this situation could be surmounted via an extensive investigation of the candidate's background. Louis Cyr, the great French-Canadian strongman, could well lay claim as the strongest man in the world in his time. We must accept the fact that Cyr was lifetime drug-free, thus facilitating a direct comparison with present-day life drug-free strongmen. In reference to myself and Cyr, I was pleasantly surprised to hear from David P. Willoughby after he had taken my measurements personally and then told me that my arms, chest and thighs and shoulder dimensions were greater than Cyr's at the same comparative body weight. Mr. Willoughby, incidentally, was the world's greatest authority on strongmen, past and present. World authorities have given Cyr, at a body weight of 350 pounds, credit for a strict overhead clean and press with 301 pounds. I am obliged to state here, for the purpose of comparison, that in 1954, I power cleaned and performed a military overhead press with 371 pounds in competition, lifetime drug-free. The search for the world's strongest man, young and old, and women, will be presented via international television, media. At present, the groundwork has been set up in the format of an annual pageant. The schedule is set to have the premiere show presented worldwide in early 1997. All those who wish to qualify for this event may do so by phone, area code 818-784-5440. In conclusion, I wish to state that the fundamental purpose of the pre-mentioned search pageant is to establish worldwide the strongest lifetime drug-free man in the world. To choose a man who is simply drug-free and may have abstained from the drugs for, say, a period of 2 months, and then at the time of competition, and call him the strongest man in the world, or for that matter, the all-time best in any other sport involving physical strength, is a mockery to further confuse, damage, sully, and destroy the glory and credibility of sport. In the final summing up, it seems, according to experts, that I could quite possibly be the one, perhaps the only one, to act or represent the criteria or measuring point from which the present day genuine, real, or true strongest man could be chosen. It may be high time to resurrect, to bring back the respect and credibility of those magnificent strong men of yore. It is high time to bring to an end this masquerade of the present world of the iron game. One thing that has been a source of amazement to me is that whenever the discussion arrives at just who is the strongest man, a lengthy debate ensues wherein there isn't even a hint of a suggestion that a sizable number of their choices could be using strength-enhancing drugs. This is scary, really scary. Have we finally reached the point where we choose to overlook all specks of... Okay, again. Have we finally reached the point where we choose to overlook all aspects of drug usage when we know full well the havoc they can wreak on the human body? What is even more frightening as I look into the future is the possibility of steroids on our kitchen table along with the coffee and toast, accepted like bread as our modernistic staff of life. An additional downside is what I choose to call hero worship of athletes by the general public, especially those impressionable younger individuals involved in sports actively or those who fall into the fan category. Unfortunately, these many millions of individuals might well be the victim of a misplaced idolatry of that which may not be what it appears to be, thus undermining the morality of sport continues. A further, most dangerous byproduct of our present-day philosophy is fast becoming prevalent in the form of success at any price. This belief is implemented, perhaps subconsciously, leading to damage or destruction of the human body. Insidious indeed. I am presently in the process of completing the second tape in my series entitled Might, Muscles, and Miracles. I take the viewer step by step as I lived it, explaining in detail from the start of my career to the attainment of strength never before accomplished by any drug-free athlete. Detailed information on my day-to-day procedure, diet, complete, fully detailed workout routines, mental attitude, in short, absolutely everything. There is no reason whatsoever that I can think of why you, the viewer, and follower of what I did, cannot accomplish what I did if you are dedicated as I was. I am convinced that my first tape, Motivation, is essential and vital as it lays the groundwork and prepares you, the trainee, to attain only the highest level of strength. An additional advantage is that I personally demonstrate my technique in all basic power lifts, describing various points of bar positioning, leverage advantages, breathing, reflex speed, to get you through those failure or sticking points in each lift. There are only a limited number of collector's issue of these new tapes to be released very shortly. If you wish to reserve this tape at a special introductory price of $19.95 plus shipping, regular price $34.95, just send me your name and address. Yours in strength, Doug Hepburn. The beginning of my acquired knowledge of the procedure involved in the development of natural strength took place at the tender age of 16. As I look back now at the age of 71, summing up the change that has taken place in the world of strength, the comparison seems to be, in many aspects, quite remarkable. Back in the early 40s, the sight of a really big, well-muscled strong man was, generally speaking, the subject of amusement and the butt of jokes by both the general public and especially the gentlemen of the press and TV media. Not all, but most. Those were the days when supposedly learned personages of universities and the like spouted that the usage of barbells would destroy athletes in competitive sport. The terms muscle-bound, retarded reflex, etc. were coined and commonly used by the greater majority of those in the position of sports authorities at that time. Their actions bring to mind the situation of the eunuchs in an Oriental harem, aptly described as they see the trick performed every night, but they can't do it themselves. Well, as the saying goes, if you're going to make a mistake, do yourself proud and make a big one. What I find amusing is that some present-day individuals of the same ilk as the pre-mentioned old-timers who are now ensconced in the institutes of learning, the remnants of which are smugly extolling the merits of barbell training. Please note, I have no wish to appear offensive or cynical. If it seems that way, I apologize. I simply want to state the facts as they occurred at that time, long ago, and call a spade, as it were. The truth will out. In the early 1940s, I had not as yet attained any great degree of insight or comprehension as to the ins and outs of strength procedures, and generally speaking, I followed whatever training systems, strength and bodybuilding mags had to offer. It seems that when I look back to those early days, that strength and muscle building systems stressed sets of high reps of 5 to 8 repetitions consecutively. I found that most of these routines emphasized aerobic and circulatory improvement, not pure strength. It well may be that in looking back, that this preliminary period prior to heavy poundage workouts, the long distance riding, soccer, etc., contributed in no small way to the basic strengthening of the entirety of the body, preparatory to the following indoctrination to the long, arduous sessions with super heavy poundages and the fundamental strength-building movements involved in powerlifting. Again, in looking back, I realize now that I was a loner, and while the other boys of my age were enjoying various social activities, parties, etc., I chose to dedicate long hours of practice in weight training and hand balancing, most often by myself. I suppose I could say that a good part of my life has been spent in my own private world. Having no brothers or sisters, or for that matter, father, and a mother who was forced to earn a living for the both of us in those early years, I was alone. Having never married, the situation has not changed unto this day. I distinctly remember the statement made to me by an intelligent young man who had spent some time with me in a job. "Doug," he said one day, "I took a look into your world and it scared me." Coupled with my crippled right leg was a further setback I received from birth, known medically as an alternating squint. In short, I was born cross-eyed. So you see, at birth I was not a prime candidate to earn the title of the strongest man in the world. Be that as it may, I continued my weight training adhering to a regular schedule. Strength magazines fell into my hands at regular intervals, and I marveled at the physiques of those truly extraordinary men. I studied their words and habits, and I suppose at first, unknowingly, I began to emulate their actions. There was one thing that I did know for sure, and that was that I would become one of these men as time passed. Slowly and imperceptibly, I began to mold my life, patterned both mentally and physically. Every few days, I underwent a ritual of carefully taping my chest, arms, etc., and took my body weight. How things have changed in our world of today. 100-meter sprinters squatting 500 pounds, bench pressing 350 plus. Female downhill skiers squatting 300 pounds for reps. Champions all. In the youthful years prior to my introduction to weight training, I participated in a wide variety of sports. I enjoyed bike racing, and although I was immature, I won a medal in a half-mile sprint against much older, experienced riders. As for distance riding, I once rode 100 miles, stopping only for 10 minutes to eat a sandwich. I was 16 years old at the time. Interspaced with the riding, even at an earlier age, I played soccer, even with a permanently crippled right leg, acquired at birth. Despite this handicap, I could kick the ball a great distance, much to the amazement of numerous players in various team games. The same ability showed itself in throwing a baseball. And my first outing as a junior league, I struck out 16 batters with nothing but a fastball. It is interesting to note that I acquired this ability by throwing a tennis ball aiming at a jam tin nailed to a garage door. During gym classes at school, an instructor initiated me into the fundamentals of tumbling and hand balancing. Of the two, I preferred hand balancing, and in time I became quite adept at this sport. I feel it is important to mention here that I stayed at the sport even during my lifting career. And as a lifeguard at our local beach, during my spare time, I devoted many hours performing full presses in a handstand position on beach logs at a body weight of 260 pounds plus. I could easily perform 10 consecutive reps on certain days when the beach was quiet. I would do as many as 30 sets over a relatively short period of time. I am mentioning this as I fully believe that this practice developed my extraordinary ability in overhead pressing with weights, etc. Also, I did not fully realize at that time that I fell upon what I now believe to be the keystone of strength. An extremely high number of sets performed consecutively with the same poundage. As time passed, I increased the intensity and duration of my workout routines. Coupled with this was a much greater volume of food intake, especially in carbohydrates and liquids, and especially milk. My daily visits to the scale showed regular increases in my body weight, and the taping of arms, chest, etc. showed sizable gains. I knew then that I was on to something quite extraordinary, although I was still in the dark as to what was happening and why. Along with all of this were flashes of the feeling of potential energy or power yet untapped. And at these yet rare moments that I could not predict, I could increase all my training poundages by as much as 20 pounds. Unknowingly at these times, I was, you might say, introduced to the vast reservoir of what I now choose to name explosive power. In the following years, especially those peak years, I experienced this phenomenon quite frequently, wherein I elevated poundages far beyond even my expectations. I vividly remember one of these occasions in 1954 that was both dramatic and humorous. It is also to be mentioned here that at the point in time, the world record Olympic press held by myself was 381 pounds. This event took place at the training facilities for lifters competing in the British Empire Games in my hometown, Vancouver, Canada. On a whim, I decided to drop into this pre-mentioned training area to see some fellow lifters I had met at the Games. I was dressed in a street suit and was enjoying a rare treat, which may shock the viewer. I must confess I was smoking a very large cigar. I must have been a sight walking into that gym, 315 pounds large, smoking that huge cigar. I suppose you could say here that I had that feeling that one of those rare occasions was about to occur in a big way very shortly. As I surmised, my lifting buddies were all there. 3 members of the Jamaican national team with whom I had struck up quite a friendship. All right? In the center of the gym was a pair of elevated squat stands on which rested a bar loaded to 350 pounds. As I walked towards the bar, cigar in mouth, the 3 Jamaican friends seated themselves on a nearby bench, leaning forward with an air of expectancy. Placing my cigar on the side of the rack, I quickly shouldered the 400-pound bar and pressed it overhead 5 consecutive repetitions. I replaced the bar in the rack, mouthed my cigar, glancing at the 3 Jamaicans. They sat as though transfixed, eyes bugged, faces as white as a sheet. Then one of the 3 slowly approached me, placed his hand on my chest and said, "Man, what do you got in there, a heart?" Right? Unfortunately, in this day and age, if you have your sights on becoming a top-level lifter, it is vital that you have ample time with little or none heavy physical activities other than your weight training. In short, great sacrifices must be made, curtailing social activities, etc. I am quite sure that no more need be spent, as I am quite sure that the viewer gets the picture. I was willing to put everything secondary to my strength building, and this is quite probably the main reason I reached my goal. Natural ability certainly helps. However, I am convinced that a man with less natural ability can defeat most of those naturally endowed with dedication and perseverance. Almost all truly great and lasting champions have both prerequisites. They're willing to put all other desires secondary and also have extraordinary physical ability. At the age of 17, radical alterations in my training and food intake began to assert themselves. These changes in my lifestyle were brought about partly intuitively and partly of necessity. From the economic standpoint, I was convinced that working 8-hour labor shifts daily would be a severe drain on my energy resources and recuperative power. Coupled with this is that I realized and was firmly convinced that a forced food intake was essential. I had concluded that in order to produce extraordinary size and strength, that this was done along with extraordinary training procedure, strength-wise. By this, I mean extremely long workout periods using a low rep, high sets in all basic power movements, such as the squat, bench press, high pulls, curls, overhead press, and deadlifts. These exercises would be split up and performed daily, concentrating on 1 or 2 only. Later in this tape, I will describe in detail the actual procedure. Of course, the development of this power and procedure took place over a period of years and was the product of many variations, all of which, it now seems to me, were primarily the product of intuition. As I became stronger organically as well as muscularly, I was capable of proportionately increasing the intensity of my overall training regimen and forced food procedure. I remember what the famous Bob Hoffman said to me in a rare meeting. "Mr. Hepburn, you do not have the internal organs of an ordinary man. You have developed super organs due to your super heavy training." I am quite sure that Mr. Hoffman, coach of the U.S. weightlifting team, knew what he was talking about, as I certainly could put a tremendous amount of food away without discomfort. I seem to be able to build strength and muscle on almost anything. I am sure that present-day dietitians would gag if they were told of my eating habits. It seemed that I could build muscle on carbohydrates. I remember the day when my body weight increased 8 pounds. Obviously, this was due to a large intake of liquids, as it was not unusual for me to consume 6 to 8 quarts of milk in one day. I am also convinced that heavy training increases the natural ability of the body to produce testosterone, especially so in young men. I feel this must have been the case in my instance, As a young teenager, although strong, I certainly wasn't big at that age. Many of the world's leading experts admitted in their writings that although they could explain, categorize all the other great heavyweights, how they were so big and strong, they were at a loss to explain why or how I attained my extraordinary level of naturally endowed size and power. In conclusion, before we now proceed into the actual detailed explanation of just exactly how I trained and applied the forced diet and intake, I would like to make a few more statements. I would now like to elaborate on the forced diet intake principle in my program. I wish to emphatically state here and now that the unique system I used in those early days was the major reason for my success in the world of strength. The following is the routine I used at the peak of my power and muscular bulk. Please note, after reviewing this tape, it is imperative that this routine be written in your training book, complete with sets and repetitions. All progress is added each training day. If ever a rep failure is experienced, it is vital that it be corrected to prevent the possibility of not reaching your ultimate goals. In passing, I would like to suggest that if difficulty is experienced in overcoming a failure, I may be contacted by phoning 604-873-3684 collect for assistance. I discovered that it takes a minimum of 30 repetitions with the same heavy poundage performed in one workout period to gain maximum strength and stamina. Once, for example, I performed 35 consecutive repetitions with 500 pounds in the full squat. I am sure that I could have done considerably more reps, but the constant weight of the bar was causing severe cramping in my shoulders and neck. I also wish to say here and now that I did not wear any supporting gear, including wraps or belt. This feat of strength and stamina was the product of my training regimen, which also included high sets, working up to 8 consecutive reps, which undoubtedly assisted stamina buildup. Periodically, I would undergo a super heavy routine involving single reps with the same poundage. The structure of all my strength building routines contained very high sets of low repetitions with identical poundages. Again, before we get into the structure of the actual routine, the same routine that I consider to be the ultimate developer of the greatest natural strength, I must state emphatically that even if the slightest alteration is made by the trainee in the written structure of the routine, the said routine is rendered ineffective. And to continue is simply a waste of time and effort if one is entertaining aspirations of becoming a great or the greatest strength athlete. It must also be noted here that every individual will vary from others in recuperative power, strength, and nervous system. It must be taken into consideration in the intensity of the actual workout period. However, stamina normally can be developed, and as it does, the length of time, poundage, overall load, and weight increase can be extended. A major pitfall of beginners is to take on more weight than they can handle, resulting in exhaustion, etc. This situation becomes more acute as we age, so seniors especially must be on their guard and would do well to curb their enthusiasm in the beginning. Your training book is your diary, as everything you do must be put on paper, past and present, to preserve all information. For reviewing when needed, especially so if difficulty is encountered. For example, there is always the possibility of minor injury or illness in your day-to-day living. This occurrence may necessitate a prolonged layoff from training. Your diary at this point will prove invaluable as you can backtrack to previous workouts and set rep poundage sequence and start in knowing exactly what the pre-mentioned sequences are at that time. This removes the possibility of disorientation in mindset, which is the curse of a serious strength builder. It is most important to find the suitable starting poundages in all exercises when establishing a new routine. This is accomplished by self-examination. Generally, the best way to go is to run through a mock routine and carefully adjust all poundages in accordance to the way they feel. Do this very carefully and take lots of time adjusting in each exercise. Keep in mind that the basic platform you are establishing forms the basis of uninterrupted progress for a long period of time. In many instances, the routine you set up in the beginning will take you all the way to your ultimate goals. Another aid in establishing starting poundages is a method I often used to take a poundage that I could do at least 2 more repetitions with if I had pushed myself to an all-out limit over and above my starting and training weight. This reserve acts as a buffer to prevent overtraining, and if you are following the routine exactly as laid out, without failing, this buffer will always exist, irregardless of the heavier poundages you will eventually use. This being so, it follows that you should never experience staleness, providing you are not ill. Your training book should be at hand during your workout session, and each and every rep or poundage increase should be entered in your book immediately after they are performed. Your reps and poundages are the building blocks that carry you to your ultimate goal, so regard them with the greatest respect and care. The act of writing all gains greatly focuses and concentrates the attention, which then is kept constantly in mind in respect to your next forthcoming workout. This brings about a potential buildup of reserve energy that you would not ordinarily have. This reserve could add 5 to a 10-pound increase in muscular power. Remember, the program you are about to receive applies to any strength-building movement. So when you know the procedure, you have a universal strength builder for any lift you choose. The exercise may change, but never the routine, as it is performed to counteract any problem you might encounter on the way to your goal. The actual training routine is in 2 parts, which I call A routine and B routine. The A routine is the primary strength builder, and the B routine for conditioning, bulk, and stamina. At certain times during your progress, the B routine is followed exclusively and progress is not interrupted. This procedure is used in the event of temporary fatigue to prevent the possibility of a lengthy period of staleness due to exhaustion. When and how to use the B routine will be explained in detail as I proceed in this tape. As we go from this point, it will be a good idea for the viewer to provide himself with a notebook and pen in order to lay the A routine out on paper. Here is the A routine. The personal poundages you will use will be filled in during your initial workout as you go through the actual routine. Warm up, the first 4 sets. Do 3 or 4 consecutive reps in the first of the 4 sets, and the balance of the remaining 3 sets do 1 rep only. Each of the 4 warm-up sets are platforms building up to the actual training poundage. These 4 warm-ups should be fairly evenly spaced poundages. The 4th and final jump is your projected training poundage. This poundage represents the beginning of your projected training routine. Also, this 4th poundage is to be repeated, working up to 10 single repetitions with the same weight. What I normally do is write out the 10 sets of single reps and poundage before I do them, and fill in the completed rep number as I do them. In both the A and B routines, I follow a time break pattern between each set, including even the single repetitions. I allow a little leeway by setting the break pattern at 3 to 4 minutes, according to how I feel. In the A routine, at the start of the routine, I pre-write the sets as a poundage and time symbol, as used in mathematics, and fill in the required rep or reps as required in each succeeding workout for each individual exercise. I do not normally strive to complete all 10 singles in the first workout. At the worst, I will be satisfied to succeed with rep increases, as I am satisfied that progress is being made in each workout, even though I might only increase by 1 repetition. At this point in the overall training routine, the B routine comes into play. The B routine is secondary to the A routine in developing maximum strength and is primarily designed to promote extraordinary muscular bulk and stamina as required in lifting super heavy weight for extended periods of time. It is also used in combating staleness when undergoing a slight downer. I am, of course, speaking here of in reference that the slight downer that I pre-mentioned is the one that you experience in the A routine. I have found that when following this intense A and B training program, that the trainee has the option to eliminate the more demanding A routine and continue on with the B routine. This option, incidentally, will be used more frequently as the trainee advances in age. However, both young and old will inevitably use this principle to a lesser or greater degree in order to continue uninterrupted progress. I must also stress here that the usage of alternating A and B routines must not be overdone as an excuse for laziness, etc. It is a delicate balance between overdoing and underdoing, and only the trainee can make this decision, preferably after some serious and honest self-evaluation and soul-searching. The important thing is that the trainee, when following this overall routine, each day, set by set, and poundage addition will have to be the vital option of doing less or more, providing that each succeeding training period shows a progress gain, however small it may be. In passing, I wish to mention here that near the end of this tape, training charts will be shown to you while I illustrate the A and B routines in detail on paper, showing initial laying out and progress, additions, etc. It is to be mentioned here, generally speaking, that those gifted with the higher physical potential, especially when young, will be capable of adhering to the maximum routine for longer periods of time without having to back off from the severity of the full A and B workout routines. Be that as it may, I am convinced, psychologically speaking, that it is always better and an advantage to have a choice. In this case, between not training at all or training a little less. Amen. I am sure that the viewer at this point in the tape will realize that a fundamental principle underlies the process of developing great physical strength, and this is that one that must force the body both mentally and physically, constantly, in a controlled manner, to attain the ultimate goal, especially to gain this goal in a natural manner as opposed to the drug syndrome where one is attempting to get something for nothing. Those who adopt this philosophy fall prey to the adage, you can pay me now or pay me later. This principle of controlled forcing extends to food intake as applied in conjunction to the A and B routines in the training regimen. Normally, forcing the food intake would not be a healthy practice, but in the case of a person undergoing daily super heavy workouts, concentrated and lengthy, and at times involving tons, and a training session brings into effect a whole new approach to food consumption in order to bypass drug usage and still obtain similar results strength-wise. This brings to mind the statement made to me by Bob Hoffman, coach of the USA Olympic weightlifting team. "Mr. Hepburn, are you aware that you do not have the internal organs of an ordinary man?" He then proceeded to explain that the years of super heavy weightlifting had developed the organs of a super strength athlete. In short, these super organs, coupled with hours of heavy training and forced food intake, produced muscular growth and strength comparable to steroids, and the like. This is to show by the level of strength and size I attained in the pre-drug area prior to 1950. Obviously, the force feeding did not damage me, as evidenced by the extraordinary strength and health I possess at the age of 72 years. Of course, forcing food intake or overeating while not undergoing long periods of heavy weight training is a no-no under any circumstances other than those pre-explained, and could culminate in health problems. It is amazing how much a man can eat in a given day with impunity, and it is as much more amazing how much muscular bulk can be acquired in the long run. I am convinced that more lasting muscular bulk can be acquired naturally without drugs and allied illness. So let's proceed now to the actual detailed method used to produce the results I attained naturally. One thing is vital to the forthcoming nutritional program, and this is an accurate scale to measure your day-by-day body weight. The body weight must be taken daily and exactly at the same time. This is very important to show even minute body weight gains, which should take place each day. This is the first sign that shows that your overall regimen of training is working as planned. By using this principle, the body weight can be increased by as much as 100 pounds if desired. This, of course, is muscular body weight with strength to match. Of course, this size could only be acquired by an individual with a large frame, but all others will gain proportionately to their size. Remember, for every few hours of increased body weight, for every few pounds of increased body weight, your lifts can increase proportionately. The main point now is to make daily body weight gains. If gains do not occur 2 or 3 days at the minimum, the food intake must be increased until the gains occur. In most cases, it only takes a small increase in food intake to do the trick. This is your measuring stick to success. Once the correct food intake is attained, no further increase should be necessary, as regular gains will occur on an ongoing basis. So, in short, the more you eat at this point will increase your gains proportionately. This principle can be used as a crash program to up lifts for a forthcoming competition if so needed to win. This procedure, I suppose, would be utilized primarily by heavyweights. As I explained in Motivation Tape 1, liquefied foods are easier to digest and should form a major portion of the forced food intake. Please note, it must be understood that the term forced food intake involves eating when not really hungry or feeling full. I discovered, if discomfort is experienced when forcing, that a glass of cold water would ease the situation. This can occur from time to time, as it did with me on rare occasions. However, this occurrence is a hell of a lot better than ending up in a hospital emergency ward due to drugs. Of course, I must admit that when I was young, I ate just about every type of food I could get my hands on, and lots of it. Surprisingly, it seems to do the trick. One thing I do know for sure, it was those preparatory years of intense heavy training that gave me the constitution of an ox. I noticed when upping food intake that a natural balance must be maintained by the digestive system. I suppose I fell into the right method to create this balance instinctively as to the choice of foods simply by my attention to body language. in respect to what I desired to consume at any given period throughout my waking hours. For example, if I had eaten a considerable amount of carbs or proteins during the day, I would invariably switch over to quantities of fruit. I then realized that by utilizing this alternating choice of foods, that I literally could eat constantly as one acted to compensate with the others, maintaining digestive balance without the feeling of plugged up fullness and the allied discomfort. I am convinced now that without the alteration of fruits and vegetables, I would have not have been able to adhere to a lengthy continuance of forced food intake. It appears that when one is young and robust constitution, that extra large volumes of a wide variety of foods considered harmful by some can be consumed with impunity, and especially so when coupled with heavy exercise daily. I am compelled to state here and now that I consumed enormous volumes of milk. Milk formed the fundamental platform of my crash strength and bulk diet regimen. Many is the time that I consumed up to 3 quarts of milk during a lengthy training session. So I must state here and now, my credo was and still is, when you force the body physically, you must force your nutrition intake proportionately. It may well be that bodily laws of an average individual do not apply to a budding champion of strength, regardless of age. This course was not formulated for those average goals and desires. It is suggested that those faint of heart seek commonplace training methods elsewhere. However, I am sure the viewer is not of the prementioned ilk, as you have already proven your worth by seeking out and purchasing this tape. So in closing, I wish you all the best in your new journey to super strength naturally. I want to state here also that at the final portion of this tape, I will now present the forthcoming information of the layout structure on charts that will be shown to you on the viewing screen. From time to time, along with the A and B routines, I used a further variation named the C routine in order to obtain a full coverage of physical development. The C routine involves working up to sets of higher reps, using a different structure of progress, thus adding a finishing touch to the overall aspect of strength and physique development and conditioning. One of the benefits of the C routine is that it provides a greater degree of room for sets and rep advance to the trainee, which assists continued progress even when the condition of staleness is present, and prevents the possibility of a total layoff from training. I am convinced that senior lifters especially will find this routine of great value if they have overtrained with sets of heavy poundages and are faced with exhaustion. In many instances, the C routine may be used in place of the B routine temporarily. I wish to stress here that the C routine involves lighter poundages. A lesser degree of progress will be attained, but progress will be continued while resting from the more demanding A and B routines. In most instances, the trainee will be able to return to the A and B routines and will not have to reduce the poundage previously used. In some instances, the trainee will be able to increase the poundage and continue on as before. I am convinced that a certain degree of variety, even in a super heavy workout program, is beneficial when following a lengthy projected regimen of training, as it greatly assists overcoming the boredom which can occur in extended training programs. I like to use the term coaxing when following the C concept training routine principle, as progress is being made by utilizing body language to establish the training load of sets and reps. The trainee can utilize a considerable degree of free choice in the progressive procedure. This is assistant to elevating a possible guilt complex due to the conception that one is overtraining, which could be replaced with a feeling of accomplishment. I suppose that one could say that the combined routines A, B, and C constitute the ultimate natural fail-safe training regimen for both the young and the old. The following is a description of the set rep procedure for the C routine. The C routine consists of 10 sets with the same poundage, which is performed after a series of 4 evenly spaced sets of warm-up poundage increases. The reps for each of the 4 warm-up sets is 3 consecutive reps. Set number 1 of the 10 sets, find a poundage that you can do 5 consecutive repetitions with comfortably. Set number 2, 4 consecutive reps. Set number 3, 4 consecutive reps. Number 4, 4 consecutive reps. Number 5, we reduce it to 3 consecutive reps. Number 6, stay with the 3 consecutive reps. Number 8, 2 consecutive reps. Number 9, 2 consecutive reps. And number 10, 2 consecutive reps. In your next forthcoming workout, striving to add 1 rep to each of the 10 sets, no more. Continue on each succeeding workout period, adding the 1 rep increase until the first set of the 10 sets reaches 8 consecutive repetitions. When this is accomplished, increase poundage in all 4 warm-ups and following 10 sets by 10 pounds for upper body and 20 pounds for lower body exercises, and continue on as before. The advantage of this routine is that if necessary, you can repeat a certain number of set poundages performed in your previous workout, so as gains are made in the majority of the 10 sets, especially those sets of higher reps, sets number 1 through to number 5. However, abusing this privilege via laziness, etc., makes the routine eventually more strenuous, as you can't decrease the poundages, yet you are required to make gains each workout. If you ignore increases in the poundage of the 10 sets, you are defeating the routine and results thereof. Seniors, please note, for over 65 years and thereon, you may need personal guidance in respect to mind-directive motivation and recuperative factors. Those interested may contact me at 879-2399, preferably after 12 noon. My area code is area 604. That's my phone code. This involves a personalized establishment of your individual recuperative time cycle based on frequency of workouts. And of course, the intensity of the workout routine. If this is not perfected, training will inevitably lead to chronic exhaustion, culminating in permanent discontinuance of heavy exercise. I have devoted the last 10 years studying this program and have presently overcome all barriers that tend to lead to permanent layoff from heavy lifting. This, I believe, is shown by my present world records in all basic power lifts acquired naturally. The following describes the order for the various exercises in the A, B, and C routines. I prefer separating upper and lower body exercises, viz. Squat, bench press, deadlift, shoulder press. Only 1 exercise is performed each workout period, alternating upper and lower body. I utilize the barbell curl as an optional exercise to be done the day after a lower body exercise, As a fill-in for the upper arms, I found that when following these daily heavy exercise routines that I only had to do one heavy exercise on a designated exercise every 5 or 6 days to make good progress. This I found was due to the high intensity of each training routine, especially so for seniors, as they need this length of a break from each exercise to gain sufficient recuperation, and that shortening this break leads to exhaustion. Seniors especially must walk the razor's edge when training with heavy poundages. They must be constantly on the alert to body language, to know when to back off and how much to back off. They must rely on instinct, when to change from one routine to the other, and how long to stay with this change, and when to get back into the real heavy stuff. I have the ability to know when to change the routine and just how much effort to put into the training. This is a great advantage when striving to maintain or increasing strength, especially in life's later years. As I age on into the 70s, I realize what a great and perhaps rare boon it is to have the ability to know what to do in all circumstances and be able to push forward regardless of age and the difficulties it presents. The young, but especially seniors, must condition themselves to face heavy poundages, especially single reps, up to 3 consecutive reps, at least every 7th day at the maximum for reassurance. If not, both young, but especially seniors, the effect is much more severe with seniors in respect to the loss of confidence, which becomes extreme when you are lifting heavy weights. Although the younger lifter can be considerably affected while following the A, B, and C routine method, and for that matter, the balance of instructions outlined in this cassette, it is of major importance to implement the principle of conservation of energy, both mentally and physically. Mind power can be frittered away, as well as the body, in useless, unproductive activity, draining vital, misdirected energy that is forever lost uselessly instead of applying this vital force into your training. Beware of this, as it can very well cause the failure to attain your ultimate goals and strength. I'd like to show you here one of the actual routines I was using as a senior. I was training with fairly heavy poundages, although I'm 71 years old. This is a sample of the A routine and the 2-hand press routine overhead. Now, these here, as you can see, are the warm-up procedures, the jumps that I start off with to get up into what I call the actual training poundage. Now, this one point that I'm pointing out here is one complete routine. This is from start to finish. The other ones, here and here and here, are following routines on other days. I notice I put the date here on these 2 different locations here. Now, after doing the warm-ups here, you can see the poundage jumps. And then, this is the A routine, incidentally, is a routine for maximum strength. It's the most severe routine. Now, you'll see here that after warming up, I did 10 consecutive singles here with 172 pounds. Now, these singles were worked up to, which I filled in. When I first started this routine, I may have done only 4 to kind of break into it. And the other additions to it depends how I feel or how I if I felt good, I might do 6, or if I felt really good, I might work out and do the whole 10, because I knew that I had a reserve there, and I was doing it quite comfortably. A lot of this is dependent upon intuitive thinking, but I think this, looking at these routines, will be very important to you to be able to do this. Now, from here, we proceed to the next routine, which would be approximately 3 days later. Now, here, I'm not quite sure of that, but it's in the I explained that to you before, the rest days in between. Incidentally, before I proceed further, if there's any questions here about what I've shown you on the tape, I'd be very happy to answer your questions. If you would want to phone me at area code 604-879-2399, I would be very happy to answer some of your questions. Now, we graduated here from 182, and you'll notice here that I took a jump to 187. And I believe, I'm not exactly because this happened before, I believe I probably did about 4 sets possibly, and then maybe it took me a further couple of routines or so to get up to, so I proceeded on as I felt, and I got my 10 singles here. But all the way through in these sets, I did not push myself to an absolute limit. I quit without going into using up everything I had to do it. I had a reserve left, in other words. Here is how I again graduated from this up to 193. Now, I want to point out to you that from the 182 to the 193, my progression was good, because this might have taken place in a matter of possibly little more than 2 weeks to 2.5 weeks. This routine represents a routine that I used in order to train for competition. Now we have 193, and I proceeded as before. As I want to point out here, this warm-up procedure here remains fundamentally the same all the way through. You can use this same warm-up routine here. Now, I'm over here, and I got this, and I believe the date here is the 4th day of the 4th month here. And then you'll notice over here, it gives you a date here, which I put in here. The stars here represent success. I performed the required 10 consecutive repetitions. Now, I worked up here, and I went to 193, and then here again, I am on the 5th month, at the 21st of the 5th month. You can see the difference in the dates. It'll give you the rate of progress I made between the 4th month and the 4th day of the 4th month, and the 12th day of the 5th month. You can see how the progress is being made here. Now, this here is the less strenuous structure of the B routine, which I use when the A routine gets to a point where it's getting a little heavy. I'm working a little harder than I wanted to. This routine I graduate over to give me a break from the A routine, and yet I'm not losing strength. I'm still holding the strength that I got from the A routine, but I'm not pushing it at that point. But it's a lower rate of progression, but I'm still making it. I want to point out that the warm-up here, when I worked into these reps here with the 154, I used the same structure for warm-up that I did in the A routine. Now we find here that you can see the way the repetitions went here with the 154. We worked the 4 reps, 4 reps, 4 reps, 4 reps, 4, 5, 4, 4, and 4, and 4, which is a higher rep. Now I worked through that, and I think it was maybe in 1 or 2 workouts or 3 workouts, I fulfilled the whole thing here, stopping when I felt that I will just let it go with that. Because as long as you make a gain, an improvement over the previous workout, that's sufficient. Now you'll notice here the dates again. You can see again the progress, which will be very informative to you, how I progressed in regard to time. Now, I went here, and then I proceeded after doing this. I proceeded over here to 160. Now, this thing here is partly intuitive. I found that in using the 4s that they went quite comfortably. I didn't set this. I said they went so nicely at this point, I knew that I could get a comparable poundage with 160. I knew I could do it from what I did in the 154. So now I proceeded here, and you can see the repetitions again. From the different dates, you can see how I succeeded with these 10 sets. You can see the 2 dates here, and you can assume that by the variance in the time or the increase of time, how long it took me, and you can pretty well figure out how many routines it took to take me if say, I was training twice a week on the press. You can see it here in the 2 dates. It shows you over here how I progressed again. And you can go through here again and see how I'm working up again. And then you see here, when I get over to this date, here, you notice that here I am doing sets of twos with 193 pounds by gradually working up in a different structural pattern to get to those weights. And you see that I'm almost as good or as close to what I was doing for the singles. Now at this point, they're working quite nicely for twos. I can go back to the A routine now and probably increase the weight and do singles again more comfortably at this point than I did when I left the A routine, because I'd been given I guess you could call it, the word was a respite from this. Now the pattern here is to have a variance of routines so that you never lose, you never go stale. You have the routine of the A and the B. Now, as we proceed over here with this press routine, here is another one where I proceeded on with the B routine again. It's continuance on the page was full, you notice. And then here again we get to the A routine. I believe these ones here, incidentally, were earlier routines that I put in the back. Now I think from there you will see the procedure between these A, B, and C routines here. I think that will pretty well give you the idea of what I was doing. This is, incidentally, was my private book that I used in order to get serious and build up for a competition. It'll show you the structure of how I train. Now, what I've used here, I used in the, for example, just in finishing off here, we can go back, for example, to the curl. I believe we go back to the beginning. I'll show you the curl routine. I'm going to give you some concept of the pound I was using in the curl as a man 71 years old. You may find it interesting. Here I am working up. Oh, that's bench press. Pardon me. We want the curl. We'll have to go to the C because I was pushing the curl. You'll notice here I started with this and I'm working up here. I'm doing in this curling routine here, incidentally, I did a strict 10 singles with 171 pounds, not a cheat curl, in a row in one workout, which I was rather proud of. And my goal, as you see I put down here, is the 1997 goal. I wanted to do a 200-pound strict curl at an age of 71, 72 years old, which I believe is rather unusual. Here we have another curl here with 176. I did those singles there, and so on. Now, that'll give you another idea of how I trained at my age to develop this strength. Now, in closing, I'd like to say here in all sincerity, if you would like to achieve your goal, if there's any way, you're very welcome to phone me. My phone number's in the book. I have the intuitive knowledge. I have the experience. I can take any man and I will get him to his goal because I know every pitfall and I know the way around it. And you can acquire this by telephone contact. Thank you very much.